Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with my co-hostesses, Scott Moon, Chuck Manley, and returning guest, Ekeke. Tonight, we are breaking down the story of the rise of Skywalker, or lack thereof. And then we're going to be talking about maybe some cool Mandalorian news, too. This episode is brought to you by No Marigolds in the Promised Land, a compact universe novel by T.S. Hoddle. We're going to talk about that a little later in the show, but Kayleen actually did a read of this story today on her Kayleen Story Time, where you can get the first chapter of this book. You can listen to her read it, and then you can go pick it up on the link that I just put in the chat. Let's see. Let's scroll back and see who was the first. That was me. Rick. This is Rick. I'm still not going to watch it.
Good choice, Rick. Good choice, Rick.
So, today, Rick gets the Keystroke Medium golf clap of appreciation for the
Sometimes you have to take a chance, so
that's true. Welcome, everybody, in the live chat. All the usuals are here. If you're just now tuning in, and this is your first time watching, if you get anything out of the show, which you may or may not, and watch Scott drink the buffalo sweat. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 likes this year. I think we're like at 860 something right now. So we need a couple more to get to 1,000. If you're watching now and have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe and then hit the little bell. You'll get notified when we go live. If you're listening on the live feed, subscribe where you're listening, obviously, and then hop over to YouTube and subscribe there, because you can always come and hang out in the live chat, and that's where the magic happens.
And bring friends, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are looking for stuff to do. They should definitely be here with us.
That's right.
Friends, family, people you're dragging off the street, whoever you can.
First of all, you're all stuck in quarantine anyway. What else are you going to do on a Monday night?
Probably binge watch every single Keystroke Medium video.
As you
it's a challenge. It's a
well you should.
It's the Keystroke Medium challenge.
And you need to go back all the way back to season 2 when Ekeke first came on the show to talk about a Star Brigade series.
I did.
Was that did I join in season 2?
Yeah.
You were there. I think you were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might have been more at the end of the season.
I'm trying to remember if you came on to talk about Star Brigade or if we talked. Didn't you have a short story in Explorations War?
I did. I might have talked about both.
Yeah.
It might have been both.
I don't remember what episode it is. Kayleen will find it. She's great at that. Go back and watch that episode from way back in the day.
That was super fun. I like that episode.
I always love having return guests on, and I always should go back and watch those older episodes, see if I can find out things I can make fun of you about this time, but I did not. So.
You can see me a lot better this time, so that's
fantastic. The visual experience of Ekeke has been enhanced for this episode of Keystroke.
Very much so.
For your viewing pleasure.
Also, Scott upgraded this week from Devil's Ass Water. He's now drinking Buffalo Sweat, if you guys were curious. I'm just a little classic whiskey for me.
I gotta see if I can find that. I want to try it.
I think it's a local brewery. That's why.
Is it? We have a lot of microbrews around here. I thought maybe somebody might have shipped some in.
Where are you at again, Chuck?
Which Dublin?
Huntsville, Alabama. Rocket City is south.
You have space camp.
Yes, we have space camp.
Nice.
Both my kids have been to space camp.
Okay, very cool.
A very underrated movie, by the way. Space Camp.
Nice.
Yeah.
Remember that one time at space camp?
I took the lunar module, and so what we're talking about today is Star Wars. Before we get into that, as always, we're going to talk about what we had going on in our writing lives this week. Cece, you're in the hot seat, but I'm actually going to throw it at Chuck first to give you a little warm up.
How do we define the hot seat? Because I've never been quite clear on how
that's wherever Chuck is sitting. Bill, me.
Okay, I don't know if it's
like I said, I know my place.
Depends on where your screen is. I also think that we need to have the screens rotate.
Yeah,
throughout the show.
We were saying pre-show that no matter what, when you come in, no matter when you come in, I always get bumped at the bottom of the screen.
Always.
So kindly,
I'm like, that's just the way it is.
I'm gonna drop out and come back in. And I want to move you guys around.
That's the way it works.
Here, watch this. See, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
So what am I talking about?
What do you have going on in your?
I finished Dark Devices, Jack Dark Book 1,
nice.
100,000 plus words. Got that polished up and sent to Athon. I'm just waiting for Steve to, send me a message and tell me how bad it sucks. And
he'll be gentle. Actually, he won't, but
no, he won't. But now I'm diving into book 2. Also, I've got like my morning book, which is that one. Then I've got an evening book that I'm trying to finish up the
that's the way to do it.
Brace Cordova.
Oh, nice.
Book 3, which people have been yelling at me for forever now, and I apologize to everyone that's done the yelling. And aside from that, just being quarantined with my kids, and they're starting to get a little bored. My daughter's playing saxophone in a dinosaur mask. My son just disappears and is really quiet for a long time, but he's 15, so
I was combing my hair. That's
pretty much what's happening over here at
Nice.
Casa de Manly.
Nice.
We went on a walk with the entire family. Like an actual, like we walked our whole neighborhood with all from my 23-year-old down to my 9-year-old. We all went. Of course, one of them rode a bike, one of them was on rollerblades, one had the dog. But I don't think we've ever done that. And it's very interesting. So we're all out there walking around. The weather's pretty. That was interesting. So we've had a lot of fun. We've got some serious blanket fort things going on. Mm-hmm. And my youngest kids decided they like rollerblading, and so they're like been rollerblading around the basement. So the carpet is like got these thousands of grooves in it from the rollerblade. So I was going to take a picture and put it up, but I didn't think it would show that well. But I don't know. Is it my turn, or did I just jump in there?
You just jumped in, and
you can just run with it.
Okay.
Run with it.
Oh my god! I'm the hostess with not the mostest, because that was rude.
Well, it's the buffalo sweat.
The buffalo sweat's talking right now. So for the thing, so I worked, which was interesting because, with the Kansas is not in like full lockdown like other places, but it is kind of in a voluntary lockdown and with a lot of limitations. Some stuff is limited. So it's different at work. Some of the calls will always be there. Some of them are not there so much because of people are all staying home. So that's been kind of interesting. And then I finished Reaper 10. Jeff put that out there. That's doing well. Excited about that. Starting on a new series with Jeff called Orphan Wars, and about halfway through the second book in a series I'm going to write for Athon. This book's 13 Mercenaries, and then I have my own side projects I always tinker with when I have time. But so writing, keeping the kids squared away, trying to keep everything fun and dandy during the quarantine.
How long is it going to be before Athon just owns Keystroke Medium?
I don't know.
I'm fairly positive they might already.
Nice.
Might as well.
What about you, Charles? What have you been up to, man?
So I've been working on the 5th book in my Pantheon Saga series, and I'm close to finishing one of the main POVs and going to do some of the side chapters around that. It's nice because you're at that point, like near the end of one POV, where it's just like, okay, everything's coming together. And it's great. And then once I finish that, I'm hoping to finish that probably no later than this weekend, or maybe a little later than that. And then I can start on the other POV. And then, the plan is to get that book out probably in late spring. And also just kind of finding ways to work out, because we can't even go to the gyms now. So luckily I have some like DDP yoga, which is like high intensity power yoga that I can do. As in DDP, yes, the wrestler DDP.
Yeah,
yeah, he's got his own wrestling. It's actually, it kicks your butt. It's insane.
Somebody else was
trying to get me to try it. She said she liked it.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Like I did it. I've done it for a number of years, but the instructor doesn't teach anymore. So I ended up just getting the DVDs themselves. And so just a matter of getting the routine in for that at home. It's interesting. Just like now it's like we're in the darkest timeline now, but it's just finding ways around it. And another thing I was also kind of doing is finding ways to entertain and connect with readers during this time, and just kind of coming up with some stuff. Like some of the stuff I was thinking of, maybe just doing some live streams, maybe writing some shorts and just kind of posting them, or even just kind of reading chapters from this upcoming book, not too many obviously, but just reading a chapter or two, doing a live reading, and just kind of finding ways to kind of entertain them, give to them. Because I know that a lot of them are stuck at home and can't really do anything. So it's like, hey, how can we connect with them in a meaningful way? And then yesterday I finally got enough backup toilet paper, because that thing is, it's like gold. It's like gold or like oil in terms
crazy,
of
man.
And so I had to go to my local grocery store that's close enough. I had to get there like an hour before so I could wait in one of the lines, because there's like one line on one level, another line on the other level. I went to the shortest line, so I was like the second person. And I was a little worried because they were letting like the elderly people go first, like half an hour before. And I was like, crap, there's going to be nothing left. Luckily, there was still more than enough, and I got my 2. And I'm like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We like today.
You can't even get it online. It's insane.
No.
So, yeah.
Paper towels either.
Yeah, I was good on that. I actually got those. So
coffee filters.
My last roll.
Coffee filters is the way to go.
Filters.
But you can use coffee filters for other things, is what it's saying. It's a little life hack in the apocalypse.
Pretty much. And then and the final thing, I think what I did was I finished watching this series on Netflix, the 3rd season of this show called The Elite. And it's basically this teen drama based in Madrid. It's like this elite teen drama, and it's actually really fascinating. It's actually what Riverdale wishes it was, but it's not. I look at it like this. You can get inspiration from anything. You fill your tank from anything.
Oh, yeah.
And I like also just watching it with just subtitles, so I can actually try and like I'm okay with Spanish, but I actually want to get better at that. So it's actually good to listen to what they're saying. But it's good inspiration. It's fascinating and good story ideas, actually. So
nice.
I like it.
Yeah.
I wrapped up. Well, I didn't wrap up. I pressed forward with the last third of Enemy of Valor this week and got about probably 2,000 words of outline notes done for the final climactic event.
2,000 words of outline notes.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Shit. That's like a whole book outline for me.
It was probably a grand total of like 10 chapters probably that I outlined, and it's probably going to be more. I hit about 68,000 words today total. And I am aiming to have that part be about 25 to 30. So we'll see. It'll probably run over. But it's good.
Did you read the live chat, Josh?
Huh? Where?
Climax of Valor.
I saw the toilet paper of Valor.
It says climax
of Valor.
Climax of Valor.
Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna do. I like the
Purell of Valor.
I don't know what we're gonna do when I'm not writing the Valor books anymore. No one's gonna have any Valor memes, and it's really gonna be disappointing. By the way, Kayleen came through in a pinch, CC, and she said Season 1, Episode 8, Season 2, Episode 40, Season 4, Episode 12.
So I think Season 1 was probably we were talking about Star Brigade there.
Yep.
Season 2 was probably when we were talking about the Explorations Volume 3.
Yep.
And then Season 4 was when I was probably talking about the Pantheon Saga.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right. There you go.
Very cool.
What else did I have? Oh, so I got I'm still not sure if I can talk about it yet. But I got my contract through 2 days ago for a short story that I was invited to write with 3 really big name authors in anthology. And
is your name, you ever watch Monty Python with the wizard? Is your name Tim?
Tim? Yes. It's the Tim. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I can say anything about it now. I'll get some clarification. Hopefully I can mention it next week. But I got the contract and returned it. And so that anthology will be out in July. And it's really, it was a fun project and really cool to work on with these guys. And really kind of insightful to see. I'm pretty sure that I got the first draft of everybody's story, and so it was really insightful to see
people's process.
Yeah. and that was cool. So hopefully next week once I get clarification, I'll be able to spread the news about that. But I'm really glad to be moving the Last Valor book into the final stages. And I got the Contract of Valor. You're right.
Contract of Valor of Doom.
Contract of Valor.
And the Toilet of Valor. Thank you, Jay. And so I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to work on next. I got a couple ideas. I want to work on a police thriller. Want to work on a follow-on Terra Nova series, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, okay, let's talk about this week's sponsor for the episode, and then we'll get into our discussion. This week's sponsor is No Marigolds in the Promised Land, and I'm going to put.
Didn't you do that already?
No, I mentioned.
You mentioned.
Oh, my bad.
But I'm going to read it now.
Oh.
40 million miles from Earth. Call NASA. 40 light years from the nearest human being, now we have a problem. John Farno is asleep in a rover between domes on Farragut, a Mars-like terraforming planet, when someone destroys the world around him. He awakens to flattened domes, no communication with the rest of humanity, and no supplies. With only a rover and whatever he's brought with him, he has to figure out how to survive and who tried to wipe out Farragut. By the time it's over, he'll wish he was the Martian. That guy had all that NASA gear had to work with. That guy had all the NASA gear to work with. Whew! That took me a minute.
Easy for you to say.
Are
Easy
you
for
sure you're
you
gonna
to
read it?
say of Doom.
Wow.
That is the No Marigolds in the Promised Land of Doom, a compact
Valor.
universe novel by Tom Hoddle. Go and pick it up. He's a fan of the show, and you won't be disappointed. And Kayleen, again, read it this morning. So if you want to see the first chapter of this story for free, you can go to our Facebook group, Facebook/group/Keystroke Medium, and you can see Kayleen read it. And she does a really good job. If you guys have never heard Kayleen Storytime, she is a phenomenal narrator. And we've been pushing her to do it professionally because she does really good. She's really good at like finding the tone for the overall narrative.
It's
but
fun to listen to.
Really good at doing the voices.
Something
too.
about
She's
it.
really good. Okay, so now we're going to jump into our topic today, the Rise of Skywalker, and I know
it could delay a little bit longer and just put it
we're
off.
not going to do that. Not going to do that.
I think we should probably wait.
This conversation is going to be really fun because this half, I can't even do it correctly. Scott and Chuck have one feeling about it, and then Charles and I have another feeling about it. So it's going to be really cool to see how the bombs land on this one. The anti-gravity bombs.
Wrong movie.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's the wrong movie. I forgot. So
now you want to talk about that one? I'll be on your team.
that's right. That's right. So the Rise of Skywalker. I finally watched it last week when it came out on digital. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go around the room here and talk about one thing that we really liked about the movie. Doesn't have to be anything in particular. It could be story, it could be whatever. And then we'll get into the story structure and all of that because there's a lot of things that we could talk about. So what I really liked about the movie is that it was freaking beautifully shot. Like, I really thought, like, just no, I'm serious. I thought it was really freaking beautifully shot. Like, it looked good.
The cinematography, is fantastic.
And you know, the backdrops, the animation, all that stuff was really good. I thought. I saw it in 4K, and it was. Really cool. I didn't get to see it I didn't go to see it in the theater, so I didn't get to see it in 3D. But 4K looked really, really good, and it was fun to watch the movie like that. And I watched it with my kids, and they loved it. So yeah, that's what I have. That's what I really liked about it. It looked really good. We'll go to Charles, and you go next.
So it's the reason why I was kind of like, damn it, is because literally that's exactly what I was going to say too. Was like the cinematography was gorgeous, and just in the theater, it was just like, oh my god, this is a beautiful movie. Yeah. Beautifully shot, beautifully rendered. The special effects looked amazing. It was a well produced in terms of visually looking film.
Right.
So that it had that down in space, and that's the thing. Any J.J. Abrams movies and any of these, a lot of these latest Lucasfilm films, they all look great. So that's never been the problem.
Yeah.
So that's all I'll say.
Chuck, you're up next, brother.
Well, there was more than one thing I thought they did well.
If you could do it under the 2 minutes, I'll give you 2.
You can probably have some of mine.
Well, I agree with both of you that it looked amazing. I thought they did a fantastic job with the cinematography. And there were, I think throughout the course of the movie, there were certain fan moments that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one that jumps out at me in particular is it's just a really quick scene, but it's when Chewbacca learns of Leia's death.
Mm.
And that kind of kicked me in the feels, man. I mean, it really did. I've been living with these characters my entire life. You know, I mean, the first movie came out when I was 10. So it's like seeing that and the way the actor in the suit, you know, he portrayed those motions of grief. I mean, that might have been my favorite scene in the movie just because it was quote unquote so human, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it does.
And I'll stop there.
It was so Wookiee.
It was so Wookiee. It was so very Wookiee. But yeah, I thought that was super well done.
What
And
about you, Scott?
I'll stop with that.
I hated the visuals. They sucked. No, I'm kidding.
This is good thing, Scott.
Actually, I just said that to be contrary. I love the visuals. I thought it was so amazing. I'd almost like to just like sit there and watch it with all the sound turned off and make up stories in my head because they're so beautiful and just well done. What I liked, I guess, most about it is by this movie, I don't know if it's anything this movie did in particular or if it's just the fact that we've been with the characters longer. I felt much more connected to the characters that I did in the previous versions or the previous ones in this particular series for Star Wars because they seemed like they were just kind of forced on us in all the others. But this one but by now I kind of felt like they would relax and kind of become themselves. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like a Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, they were a little bit. Yeah. I think I've done movie raping me.
You know what? After Last Jedi, I might agree with you.
Yeah, but I felt the characters were they kind of relaxed a little bit and kind of took on a little bit more of their own thing. So, you know, it was more. I thought that was a little bit better.
Okay.
So one of the things that I was telling Chuck this right before we started is that just from a story standpoint, the story was set up to fail, I think, before they even started shooting this movie.
Oh my God.
And I think as writers, we're all looking at it for the story, right? And we see all the faults. But by the way, spoilers, because it's been out for a while. If you don't want to spoil it, don't watch the show until you've watched it. But there's no reason to not talk about it. But anyway, you know, I actually didn't really mind The Force Awakens so much. It set up the new characters. It was a kind of a rehash of A New Hope, but it set up a lot of promises and it set up a lot of things that if they hadn't been completely just torn out and thrown away with The Last Jedi, might have rolled into a good trilogy. And I think some of the reason that The Rise of Skywalker was so not bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was just so from a writer standpoint is because they had to go back and put all the stuff in that they probably would have done in the second movie had the writers remained the same and they would have just bam, 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 1, 2, 3. Then some of the quest portion of the last movie could have been rolled into the second movie, and it wouldn't have been, oh, MacGuffin here, MacGuffin here, MacGuffin here in the last movie to get them to where they needed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that what The Last Jedi did as a failure, just as a movie in and of itself, kind of screwed this movie because they had to basically fix themselves out of the hole that they had dug, and they didn't have any much of a choice to get out of it. I think that I would have some of the stuff that I didn't like about the movie was the lack of payoff, I guess, in the deaths of certain characters. Like you have Palpatine come back, and that just basically it diminishes Anakin Skywalker's sacrifice in killing the Emperor in the Return of the Jedi. Just completely wipes that sacrifice out. It means nothing now because he didn't do what he wanted to do. He didn't do what he was trying to do.
Do it.
And then to set up this whole Rey was a Padme thing and these clones and the thousands of ships that are off in the middle of nowhere. A lot of that, I just looked at it and go, how did you do this? Like, there's no possible way he could have done this and had nobody known about it. There's absolutely no way. And so, but then, you know, you have the point where Chewie's ship gets shot down. And instead of just making that an emotional moment for everyone, they ruined it 5 minutes later. And they ruined it for the viewers, right? It wasn't even ruined for the characters. The characters had no idea. And so that kind of storytelling where you're now like, it's okay, everybody watching at home, Chewie's okay, but we're not going to tell the main characters of the movie yet. They're still going to be making decisions based on information they don't understand. If you're not going to show the characters in the movie, don't show the viewers, don't show the audience, because that's going to ruin the emotional payoff. Like, that's just simple story stuff that I'm like, these writers get paid millions of dollars to come up with these plot points and these story structures and these things, and they're missing the basics of emotional setup and payoff. But that's just me. So let's go back.
I think you went over your 2 minutes, Scott.
I'm sorry, damn it.
I think you did.
All right, Chuck or Scott, you're up.
Nope, you took mine. Go ahead, Skip.
Okay, skip to Chuck. Ready to go.
Manly man.
So everything you said, yes, that's all true. They were absolutely course correcting from Last Jedi, and they were trying to pack 2 movies into 1 movie, because Last Jedi should have been a big long quest movie to get all the crap they needed now.
Agreed.
And then the 3rd movie would have been the resolution of everything.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that's what Abrams had in mind in the first place.
Yeah.
So yes, from a pure storyteller, I'm going to break it down, and you know, that's that kind of mindset. Yeah, it was full of holes. I mean, it was just full of holes. Screen door on a submarine. It was just full of holes. But if you can shift your mindset over to, all right, I'm going to turn off the critic and I'm just going to watch it for a Star Wars movie.
Right.
It hits all the notes.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. If you don't ask too many questions and just kind of enjoy the ambiance of Star Wars, you know, and that's what I tried to do.
Yeah.
I went to the movie.
I went into the theater with the attitude, all right, this is them trying to fix that hellish clusterfuck that was the last movie.
Yeah.
I remembered.
And so it's going to have flaws. I just want to see lightsabers and force powers, and you know, I'm going in for the fanboy stuff.
Okay.
And I think if you approach it with that attitude, it's all right. It's not terrible.
Yeah. Scott,
So
you wanted to
I was just basically just agreeing with Chuck, and I actually remember the parking lot as I was driving into the movie theater. I can see the scene where I thought to myself, I'm going to enjoy this movie. I made a conscious decision I was going to enjoy the movie, and I went in and I did enjoy it. And I tried not to overanalyze the story, and I had a good time. I had good visuals, good music, the characters. If I pretended like I'd never seen a Star Wars movie before, it was okay. But there are some things I do have problems with. Like, I hated the fact that now they can magically shit out 5,000 rebel ships at the end of the story that they could never come up with any other time.
Right.
You know, there's lots of things like that, but that's the problem with every single sci-fi or action movie ever that's been made in the last 20 years. It's all the same thing. Like Transformers. I mean, you have like special forces guys with M4s fighting 200-foot tall space robot aliens from outer space. I'm like, how is that?
There are way too many humans in those stupid.
They have to look heroic.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah, you can stomp on them. Do what Megatron did. Flick them away.
It's
Yeah.
like they made
Disgusting.
it's like they made Palpatine a Bond villain, and he
Right.
was off in his like Arctic
His secret
hideaway
lair petting his cat.
in his secret lair, petting his and $1 million, 1 million Star Destroyers, and
What's better than a billion is a million.
a million.
$100,000.
See, what should have happened, in my opinion, was in Force Awakens, instead of having all this First Order shit.
Well, before you go into it, I want to get my my piece in.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So when I was watching the film, I felt absolutely nothing. I felt it was just empty. It was empty visuals, empty story. I think part of it is because I kind of knew what was going to happen like a couple months ahead of time because somebody leaked it online. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. Yeah, and basically to agree with Josh, pretty much this was a course correction, a huge course correction, because The Last Jedi was such a huge abortion and such a terrible freaking movie. But the problem with not going too far back too quickly, but all of this started because of The Force Awakens, which I enjoyed. It was a good movie. It was fun. It was light. It was basically A New Hope 2.0, but a lot of the faults started there. And they continued on. And I think what happened with JJ is that he actually did leave loose outlines for the next couple movies. He gave wiggle room for whoever's going to take over because he wasn't planning to come back. But I guess what happened is that Lucasfilm and the director they chose decided to go rogue and make their movie.
We're gonna start calling him. We're gonna treat him like the Lord Voldemort of Harry Potter. Like he's the director that will not be named.
Oh, Ruin Johnson.
Yeah.
But basically, as we saw, that movie was terrible, and it doesn't even. Here's the thing. This is what I say to people. Even if you like the movie, it was still a terrible movie. It doesn't matter. It still was a terrible movie because it didn't do its job as a trilogy. One, as a film, and as the second part of a trilogy, it didn't do its job.
Right.
It was completely different. It just killed all these threads that were going. It's not even getting to what they did to Luke. But going back to The Last Jedi, not The Last Jedi, I'm still stuck on it. Rise of Skywalker. You're right, is that there was no stakes in the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
No stakes because, C-3PO is getting a wipe. And then all of a sudden, nope, he's fine. There's a backup.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No consequences that lasted for more than 5 seconds.
Because they did that as some kind of like, a heart-wrenching moment that we have to delete.
Oh, when they wiped him, yeah, it's kind of like, wow.
But he's been useless this entire trilogy. It's like no one cared about him. He was irrelevant.
Well, not only that, but why would you program an ancient Sith language into the thousands of languages that you have, but then put in a program
block for it,
block that he can't translate? It makes no
because the story said so.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
That's a big thing.
They put in all these story things, completely just ignoring really good story rules
and
lore. Like that, like the force powers that they introduced in this trilogy. I'm cool with new force powers.
Oh yeah.
But when you have force Pony Express FedEx
yes.
that in nowhere in any of the lore in the history of Star Wars can somebody
that was pretty bad.
and then you're like, okay,
I mean, it made for a cool visual, her reaching behind and him reaching like that. But come on,
like, the Force Skyping in the Last Jedi was cool. Like the Force Skyping,
that wasn't bad.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Telepathy.
But now it's like we're having a conversation here, and I'm like, "Oh, here, Charles, have a drink," and he's like,
I'm gonna take your mic.
It's like they.
God, I wish he had a drink just like yours.
I know.
I agree, but having said that, they did at least do better than they normally do in setting it up because they did it first. They did it with small things first.
Right.
But like in The Last Jedi, they just would do that like out of nowhere, just throw it at you. Like, hey, by the way, Luke is on another planet controlling everybody with this illusion that he created and defeated the whole army with an illusion.
But here's another thing too. It kind of builds on what Josh actually mentioned as well, is that this trilogy, particularly the Rise of Skywalker, there were two major sins that it did. It basically undid and rendered irrelevant everything that the big three, Han, Leia, and Luke did in the original trilogy. Because when you think about it, Leia and Han are both terrible parents, and Leia is a failure as a leader because the New Republic basically went to crap.
It is true.
With the littlest thing. Luke was a failure.
Well, hold on a second.
All she had to do was say that.
Hold on. Luke was he failed as a Jedi teacher because we never even got to see his new Jedi Order. We never even got a reason to care about that or the New Republic, and they all got systematically killed off. Obviously, Carrie Fisher, she died naturally, sadly, but all of them got killed off, and they were all basically failures at what they did. And ultimately, when you think about it, it's no longer the Skywalker saga. It's the Palpatine saga because the granddaughter basically is the only survivor. All the Skywalkers are dead. And she basically usurped the Skywalker name and she took over. So it's like the Palpatines won.
Right.
Terrible.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's actually a brilliant analysis. I never thought about that. But how disappointing that is that they Go ahead.
The one point I wanted to bring up is in Force Awakens, you were talking about the New Republic never having been a thing. Didn't they blow up the capital city?
Yeah, but we never got a reason to care about it. That's the thing.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood what you said.
There was never a reason.
No, you're right about that. Absolutely. I misunderstood what you said.
Because they basically, it seems like JJ went for the cheap thrill of like, oh, yay, Leia's back, as opposed to there was the scene that they cut out that actually kind of had a little more explanation. And going back to the Rise of Skywalker, this is another reason why this movie sucks, is if you need supplementary material to explain something that sucked in the movie and it still makes no sense, you made a bad movie. Yeah. Because what they ended up doing is that, oh, wait, it wasn't really Palpatine's original body. In like the book, they said it's actually like a clone of his body. I'm like, why didn't you say that in the movie?
Yeah.
It was dumb.
Well, and I think too, I think it would have been, knowing that the whole Palpatine thing was coming, right? If they had worked with that in The Last Jedi, would have been cool that Snoke could have been some like first prototype clone, right? And that's why he was all messed up.
Yeah.
But I thought when you mentioned the having scenes to fix what people had already done. After the Last Jedi and Admiral What's-Her-Nuts flying her ship.
Holdo.
Yeah. Holdo.
Who's a terrible commander, by the way. But
oh my God, so bad.
She
people.
She takes her ship and she ramps it through the ship, which if we mentioned this in the last episode when we talked about it, if that was a possibility, why hadn't they just done it before when they were making the Death Star? It renders everything obsolete, right?
And that's the thing. It changes the rules in a bad way because I'm like, anyone could have done that.
A freaking droid could have done that.
Because that's the thing. That's not
about that. Did you guys catch the line in this? Did you guys catch the line in this movie where they threw it away? Yeah, because they asked, why don't we just do the Holdo maneuver? And somebody says it will never work. That was a 1 in a million shot.
Yeah.
And my question is, if it was a 1 in a million shot, then it had to have been the best pilot ever to pull that off. Mm-hmm. And she was nobody. She was a tactical commander. She wasn't a pilot. She was maneuvering a warship, not a fighter, by herself.
And Hux knew exactly what she was going to do in The Last Jedi. He's just like, move the ship, shoot the ship down, So it's just like, clearly it's been done before.
So, like, those are things that they should have left alone. From a writer's standpoint, coming in to fix The Last Jedi, I would have completely just moved away from that and left it alone. I wouldn't have paid it any lip service at all.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about a couple of the plot points that round out the end of the movie, that are story-wise weird, right? So to me,
it's a lot.
Horses riding on a ship.
Okay, yes, that's one.
Space horses.
but that's also a Star Wars trope that they hit.
That's true. The ground battle, the epic ground charge, the enemy, right?
Well, and the like most of the Star Wars movies have always had that natural organic, low tech element up against the high tech
Ewoks.
Well,
like the Ewoks and that kind of thing. That's a Star Wars thing.
If you look at Return of the Jedi and then mirror the ending of Return of the Jedi to the Rise of Skywalker, you have three elements going on there. You have the Jedi battle with Luke and Vader and the Emperor. You have the space battle and you have the ground battle. So here in the Rise of Skywalker, you have the Jedi battle, which is Palpatine and Rey and Kylo. You have the ground battle with the horses and everybody else that really do
on the outside of the ship.
And then you have the space battle. What's interesting to me is they have these really high-tech, massive battle ships that have these, all of them have these planet killers now, and we're ramping up the stakes for no reason at all. And they don't know which way is up because the gravity is messed up. So they have to have some kind of tower that tells them how to go.
Another MacGuffin.
It's another MacGuffin. Not only did they have the dagger that they whatever, and then they had two Sith maps because they have to have another one. The entire movie was based off of series of MacGuffins because they could not just have a good story. They had
like a video game.
Yes.
Yeah, it's literally a video game.
It's literally just let's create something that we can tell people that we're after, that we're doing.
And light speed skimming, dude, that would wreck your ship after like the first time.
When he jumped the first time, I was like, didn't Han in the very first movie say we can't jump without precise coordinates because we could fly into the heart of a star or something?
It's not like crop dusting.
Exactly. And now he's just bloop, 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 bloop. And what gets me too is that he's doing this hyperspace jumping and the fighters behind him are just following him wherever he goes. How do they know where he's going to end up out of hyperspace?
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that happen that just logically, when you think about it, like why?
Yeah. It's like a movie. It's like when you literally, it's one of those films where you start actually thinking about it.
Yeah,
it just falls apart like a Jenga board.
You honestly cannot watch the movie with any logical thought.
Well, I think you hit on the crux of the problem with not just this movie, but a lot. Even really, if you think about it, going back to the prequel trilogy, even is that they established rules.
Yes.
In 4, 5, and 6, and then proceeded to just break them for the sake of whatever reason.
I mean, the prequels
can't do that.
Yeah,
you can't do that in a thing.
The prequels had their problems, but I mean, there was at least, when you look at it from a 60,000 foot view, you at least had a plan and a plot, particularly what Palpatine was trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem with the sequels, with the prequels, wasn't the story; it was the performances.
Yeah.
Some of the writing.
Yes.
Because Lucas cannot write a love scene to save his life.
God,
100%.
So uncomfortable.
I remember when the Phantom Menace came out. I absolutely loved the Phantom Menace until I looked at it as a writer, and I was like,
"Exactly,
damn Metachlorians, really."
Oh,
I do. Oh my God!
I actually shouted in the theater out loud. I went, "Don't explain the magic! You never explain the magic!"
I almost did that. I literally.
Did.
I did. Said that. I literally
that loud. I was so pissed.
I was literally shouting in my head. I was just like, "No! Star Trek. That is not Star Wars."
Right. And they took up they explained away the mystery, which was so great. Like the Force was awesome. Like the mystery, the magic was awesome.
Yeah.
And then to just explain it away by this thing.
Making hard sci-fi by making up a word called Metachlorians.
Yeah. So Tyler says, Tyler Davis in the chat says, can we talk about the dagger MacGuffin, the ancient one that knows where the second Death Star is and where Rey is going to stand, which is a great point to bring up because not only do we have ridiculous MacGuffins, if the Emperor was so set on hiding this spot, he wouldn't give you a thing to find the thing that will find him. It's like any other treasure movie that you like, National Treasure with the Nick Cage movie. If they didn't want anybody to find it, why did you leave so many clues to find?
And why did you leave a dagger that was shaped exactly like the ruins of the Death Star? Right. But actually, I wanted to jump back to something about Palpy or Sheev. We'll call him Sheev because that is his first name. Basically, that was another consequence of having to fix the mistakes of The Last Jedi, is because the expectation was that Snoke was going to be around until at least the 9th movie. And Rian Johnson killing him off really let them, literally screwed them over. So Palpatine was actually bringing him back was like a late in the game choice. Like he was not supposed to be in the movie, because I remember when Colin Trevorrow, he was supposed to direct that. And because of all the circumstances with Carrie Fisher's death and all that, there are things that he wanted to keep, or like, hey, let's not do this. And he got overruled. So that's one of the reasons why he was outed. He got out as a director. And then they brought back, I think it was Abrams who decided to bring back Palpatine. That's why there's no sign of him in any of the other movies.
Well, I think that Johnson did so much damage that Abrams, when he came back, he basically had to find everything that might draw the attention of all the fans that Johnson alienated.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Palpatine was back. I think that was a business move, in my opinion.
The interesting thing,
because I think as writers, we're going to criticize it, but just a person who's just viewing a Star Wars movie without breaking it apart the way we do, I think they might have appreciated that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, if you look at the model of all the other villains in the Star Wars, the prequels and in the original trilogy, where you have the Emperor and the Sith Lord. There's always two, right?
Yeah.
And so so you have the 6 movies that basically have Palpatine as the uber bad guy, and then you have the underling, right? And in the first trilogy, you have Vader as the bad guy for most of the time, but then you also give him a redemption arc because he finishes the big bad guy, right? And so, and in the other trilogy, you have you actually have 2. I really wish they would have left what's his name, the bearded guy, out and just kept Darth Maul in. But you had Palpatine as the overall.
Yeah.
And then
I think it all went wrong when Darth Maul was killed, because when he first showed up, I was like, "This is an awesome new bad guy," and then he's gone.
But you know,
Anakin
I know why
should have killed Darth Maul in order to become Darth Vader.
Yes, absolutely.
I actually am okay with Darth Maul being killed. Don't get me wrong; he was cool. He was an awesome bad guy, but I felt that he was kind of also a one-trick pony, because when you think about it, when you look at the way, like, the progression, Darth Maul was essentially just kind of an assassin. He was like basically a rabid dog for what he needed in terms of getting the separatists together. He needed a statesman. That's where Darth Tyrannus or Count Dooku came in. The guy had wealth, he had resources. He was also a Jedi, so he could have that duality. He was a respected figure, and also choosing him, who was already disillusioned after crap, I'm forgetting his name. What was Liam Neeson's character's name? I forgot.
Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon Jinn. Thank you, Qui-Gon Jinn. So after Qui-Gon Jinn's death, having this prominent Jedi speaking out and leaving the Jedi Order, that's a huge blow to their reputation. Why did this guy? He's been with the Jedi Order for like almost his entire life.
Yeah.
So from a story standpoint, that makes sense, because that gives him that gives him credibility. You know, and also you had somebody who, you know. I get that, you know, you had to kind of make Obi-Wan look like, okay, he actually beat this guy, give him some credibility, and then you have a guy who actually was a match, more than a match, for Anakin and Obi-Wan, despite their power.
Well, I think the reason I bring that up is because when you look at the way they set the villains up in those movies, then you look at the way they set the villains up in these new movies, right? And you have Snoke in the first movie and Kylo in the first movie. And so the way they set that up is Snoke is going to be the overall big baddie. Kylo is going to have a redemption arc at some point, which he kind of does. And then we are able to destroy the bad guy. But here they eliminate it. And they eliminate, in the second movie, they eliminate Snoke. So now it's either we have to eliminate Kylo, and because somebody has to, like, the bad guys has to come out, like it has to carry the arc into the next thing. So instead of having to eliminate Kylo, now they have to create somebody that's bigger than Kylo that they can get rid of and still have the redemption for Kylo, because everybody knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And
They did have kind of a scatterbox of bad guys. What was that? What was the
Hux, Hermitage Hux.
Hux? Yeah. So Hux is like a bad guy, but now he's a spy, but now he dies stupidly. And
And here's the thing about Hux is that he was great in The Force Awakens because he was just like crazy scary. He was a true believer. He was like a neo-Nazi, and he was a true believer. And then The Last Jedi turns him into a joke, turns him into a Rudy Poo, turns him like basically gets him humiliated in front of his troops, not just by that your mama jokes, but also by Snoke. By Snoke, he basically just humiliates him, and so he's rendered like useless. It's like I can't fear this guy.
Yeah,
he's a loser. And then going back to
the newer Admiral in the Force Awakens, they bring in this new guy that somehow outranks him. I'm not really sure how the hierarchy went, but at some point he gets outranked by this other Admiral,
General Pride. Yeah.
General Pride. And so now his motivation is he just doesn't want Kylo to win. That's a horrible motivation. Like this guy was a true believer in the First Order. Now he's just going to throw a lot of it away because he had a bad day with Kylo.
And going
bad day. That sounds like a song. Like a
song. But going back even to The Force Awakens, because again, so many of these issues started there. This is a huge problem I had, even though I enjoyed the movie to a degree. But Rey should have never beaten Kylo Ren. Should have never, ever, ever, ever beaten. This is because one of the big issues that a lot of people had when it came to Rey is because she was Wonder Rey.
She was
a Mary Sue.
Right.
I don't care what anyone says. She was a Mary Sue. Yeah. Because think about it. She was basically Luke, Han, and Leia in one package.
Yeah.
They maybe gave her some nuances finally in the last movie, but it was a little too late.
Right.
But the thing is that she never needed to be rescued once. She was never in any danger. Like, even when she was in danger, she found a way to get out of it herself. So I'm like, why do we need anyone else? Right. Like, a lot of people say, well, Luke was a Mary Sue. I'm like, not really, because in the first movie, he would have died a couple times if it hadn't been for Ben and then Han back in the day. And then also when he
gets picked up from the Cloud City after he gets
And it's also, even just in the beginning when they're on Hoth, when the Wampa like knocks the crap out of him, it's Han who saved him.
Yeah, Han who saved him.
So he needed, before he got to that point where he was in Return of the Jedi, even Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader is the one who finished off the Emperor because Luke wouldn't have been a match for him, even though he was a Jedi then. Yeah. But with Rey, she beats Kylo Ren, even though, she was kind of running and chasing and wasn't good before, she beats him. And so it's just like, well, why do I want to see them fight again? She's already kicked his ass. So
she goes from scavenger to she can do anything.
Yeah, because the thing is that, think of it like this. You could have done two things if Kylo Ren had won. Or he beats her, disarms her, and not literally disarms her, but just knocks the lightsaber away and says, I could teach you, and then they get separated. First and foremost, with Rey, it gives her a motivation to get better. It gives her a reason to stay with this rebellion. Yep. And it gives her a reason to find Luke and train because, I lost. I've never needed anything. Now I need to get better. Now I need to train. But it also really builds up Kylo Ren as a legitimate threat because it's like, okay, he was injured. He got shot by Chewie's bowcaster, which had been built up the entire film. If he could beat her when he was injured, imagine what he could do when he's 100% healthy.
Absolutely.
So you have him as a legitimate threat, and this is the mountain that Rey has to climb and defeat, just like with Luke when he had to face Darth Vader. So that way, it's like you build her up, and you don't do it at the expense of everyone. You build both of them up in a really good way. So that way, when they next fight, you're really looking forward to it, and you're not certain who's going to win. And that's a good thing.
And I think you're right. I think that when you watch any of Rey's confrontations or battles with anyone, you don't really have a thought about what if she fails, because she's not going to. She has the only time that she's down in the dumps is in the first movie when she gets kidnapped or picked up and then interrogated by Kylo. Mm-hmm. But even then, she learns how to do the Force things like magically and is able to
instinctually.
And the thing too is, I think that what some people who are kind of the defenders of the Mary Sue thing, what they're missing is this. It's not that her displaying a huge amount of power, doing something amazingly, that's not the problem. That would have been cool to see that she has potential. But the fact that this is what happened throughout the entire film.
Yeah. There was
Yeah.
no buildup. There was no
The growth and change is an important part of the payoff.
Yeah.
She went from also she learns how to force heal people, which I don't know that was brought up anywhere else. But she
had the books though. I think the
that makes
connotation
sense.
was she learned right. That
so she learned
she had the books. I think she learned stuff from the books. I think that was how they set that up.
but then Palpatine basically destroys a billion ships in space with force lightning, and she stops it with a lightsaber.
Unlimited power, dude.
And
Yeah.
so I want to talk about that the ships.
Itty bitty living space.
Itty bitty living space. Phenomenal
I
cosmic.
had to do it. I'm sorry.
So Scott and I talked about this too a couple of days ago in the ending where they have this epic ending.
Please.
Where the hell did all these people come from that they just take the word of these small...
Because Landau Calrissian came around and said, "Hey guys,
That's right. It's
Yeah.
Lando,
better be a
dude.
party.
Come on.
Let's do it."
Right.
Yeah, because it's like, where were they? Where were
Where
they
were they before?
They never showed up one single other time.
They had that many people to go against the Starkiller base in The Force Awakens. They would have completely trounced the First Order in the first
This would have
movie.
been over. This would have been
In the
over.
first movie.
No,
I thought that while I was watching it, I thought that very like, wow, Lando has really polished his game over
know.
there.
Dude, 45, man.
He's been working on his Instagram account. He's got a lot more followers. Ow.
Oh, there you go.
Social
Star Wars
media
social
activate.
media. There you go.
the fact that he
All right, so okay.
being
And by the way, this actually gets back to the whole point I was talking about earlier about supplemental material. So in the novelization,
Oh yeah.
they said about Rey that, oh yeah, I guess somehow when they connected, when he was trying to probe her mind, she apparently downloaded all his knowledge about the Force. And I was like, what?
No.
No.
I like
No.
Corvo's take on it.
I do too.
Unlimited.
Limited.
Like-
Okay, so we have established
Hit me.
that the most recent trilogy of Star Wars films are as full of holes as a wheel of Swiss cheese. All right, we've come up with that.
Crap.
So here is the question I want to put to the group,
Hit me.
and I'll answer it first when I ask it. Going forward, what do you want to see in the next Star Wars series, trilogy, movie, whatever? I want to see them go back to the old Republic when there's a whole lot of Jedi and a whole lot of Sith, and you've got the whole nations against each other kind of thing. I want to see them establish the rules of the universe and just stick to them going forward, no matter how far in the future they jump ahead of the old Republic going forward.
Can I go first?
Go first, man.
I would. So
Technically.
I don't know if I'm in the minority in this, but my favorite Star Wars movie of the most recent Star Wars movies is Rogue One.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
that's
like Rogue
excellent.
One.
I felt that even though you know that every character is going to die at the end of this movie, I cared about every single one of those characters.
That actually made me care more.
And the journey to get there, the cool things that they did to get there, I thought it was well set up. I thought it was well done. So thinking about going forward, I don't want to see a Rebel versus Empire worlds like galaxy dependent story.
Yeah.
Right. You want to see the Mandalorian, more small scale.
I want to see
Yeah.
something where you have a group of characters that you make me care about on a story that's important to the characters. It doesn't have. It could be anything. It could be saving. It could be saving a planet. It could be doing something, but on not on a galaxy spanning scale.
A more contained, personal mode.
Contained personal story where they set up the rules, like you said, and they stick to those rules. They don't create magic to fix the stuff that that messed up earlier. And even if they did a story where the Force wasn't involved, like The Mandalorian, where
Right.
The Mandalorian, the reason I think I like The Mandalorian so much is it's a character-centric, small story. When you look at it, it's just about the Mandalorian protecting Baby Yoda. Like that's all the story's about.
Yeah.
Like, on a very like macro level. There's a whole lot of stuff.
Well, it's character driven.
It's character driven. And it's not if Baby Yoda dies, well, it could be that Baby Yoda dies and the universe folds in on itself, but it's not a
This universe would.
It's not a Star Killer base trying to kill millions of people, and if we don't
It's
stop,
old. It's
millions
old.
of people are gonna die. That's old.
It's-
something
yeah.
that makes me
Impersonal.
care about the character.
But don't you think you could tell a story like that even with force powers involved?
You could. You absolutely But
that's
Just don't
the
make them
kind of
gods.
thing
Just
I'm
don't make
talking
them.
about.
Just don't make them gods.
I
Just
wanna
make them
see-
where they have.
Right.
I want to see a Jedi that gets hurt, that makes mistakes, that has trouble deciding what's the right path to take, and he's not
Right.
an uber Palpatine.
Well, see, the reason I said I'd like to see him go back to the old Republic is because back then there were a lot of Jedi, there were a lot of Sith, they had their own little empires. I want to see a story about a fallen Jedi, a guy with a lightsaber in one hand, a blaster in the other, trying to Han Solo with a lightsaber. That's what I want to see.
Cool.
You want to see Cade Skywalker.
Cade Skywalker, exactly.
There you go.
I really like to see them do the Thrawn trilogy, and
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't make that stuff canon.
it's so when she said they didn't have any material to make.
Oh my god!
Are you kidding me?
That was such a load of bull crap. When I saw that, I was just like, "Are you serious?
Yeah,
Really? Really?"
What about you, CC? What you want to see in the next one?
Okay. I think one of the problems that we've seen too often with a lot of these big sci-fi franchises is they keep going back to the well way too much when it comes to these past things, these prequels and whatnot.
Yeah.
I want to see them move forward. I want to see a new Jedi Order that's similar to kind of what you saw in the EU. I'd like to see I also agree with you. I like what they're doing with the Mandalorian with some more personal stories or just stuff that's on the side, where it's just like it doesn't have to be a saga of some family or whatever. It's like, hey, you see Jedi's just kind of doing their thing, going on missions, and you get to care about a certain character. You care about these characters. You see them actually, okay, this clearly didn't work when we tried this before, the old Jedi Order, where we were kind of got bloated, we got arrogant, we weren't able to see the light in the dark, we weren't studying the dark. What changes are being made to avoid what happened before with the old Jedi Order and then Luke's barely there Jedi Order?
Right.
2, here's the big thing I would love to see. Please put Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau in charge of Lucasfilm, because whoever is in charge of before is just not working. Like, here's the thing. I'm going to get into a little bit of a rant. Bear with me.
Do it.
That's why we invited John, man.
And this is something that I've always believed when it comes to storytelling. And, I say this for somebody who's a person of color. I think inclusion is important, but if the only interesting thing about your character is their gender or their ethnicity or who they love, I don't give a shit.
Right.
I want to actually care about the characters.
Right.
I don't care that Rey's a girl. It's great that a girl, you have a girl Jedi, but if you're just like, oh, you should care. If you don't like her, then you're a sexist. It's like, dude, pardon my French, but
100%. 100%.
You know what? I will be honest with you. One of my biggest problems with the most recent movie was that the way they shoehorned that lesbian kiss in at the end.
That they ended.
It's not that I minded the kiss at all, but I wish they had developed the
character.
I wish I gave a shit about those two characters getting reunited. You know what I'm saying?
We didn't have a reason to care about them. And here's the thing: they didn't have the balls to keep it in China. So excuse you.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Real hashtag resistance, and then you can make a whole thing like, oh, China wouldn't let it in, really, because you didn't fight for it.
Right.
So it's just like that. That's my biggest thing, is that give us characters that we care about, because that's been the problem, is that without going in, just this virtual signaling, it's just like give us characters that are interesting, that are developed, then that way, and it's like, okay, there's somebody who happens to be this, but they're still a character.
Like if you
that is, yes,
if they made
I agree with that 100%.
If they made a gay Star Wars character who was the main character in the whole thing, and he was the hero, I would not that would not be a big deal to me if they actually built that. They set it up. They just didn't we're just gonna make him gay because we need a gay main character.
Just because.
I don't need that. I don't want to deal with
it.
But if
I want a character where, okay, he's this character, he just happens to be this.
Yeah, exactly.
And Corvo actually brought up a really good point. This is something that I don't know why they're saying that diversity. Well, if Kathy Kennedy had actually read the EU, then she saw from the source material there actually was diversity there, and there were a lot of kick-ass, great female characters in the EU. like Mara
Yes,
Jade,
that is absolutely true.
like so many of the female Jedi there, like all these other characters. But
Can you imagine if they made Thrawn and Mara Jade was like the biggest kick-ass fucking movie? Like, come on.
Mara
That
Jade
would
is
be
great. I
fantastic.
love Mara Jade. She's such a great character.
Yeah.
You know?
What about you, Scott? What do you want to see?
You guys
Fantastic.
pretty much, but you guys pretty much covered it. But I would like to see not such a. I'd like to see on a more of a micro level of a story rather than the giant, like you said. So, like for one thing, like when they showed the fleet in the Rise of Skywalker with all those ships, and there was like what is like 100 or is like 1,000 of these ships that any one of them would take the resources of like 3 planets to build. I'm like, where did they even find the metal to build that many ships? Much less put
or the people
on
that
it.
build them.
Who were those people who were just there in the stadium, just
millions of people,
kind of waiting to fill
millions of people standing around in these ships. So I would like to see, like I said, like I wouldn't mind seeing like a Jedi Academy type things that maybe like rival faction Jedi Academy.
Dude, that would be
you know, like I would mind seeing like
small and contained. That would be great.
Yeah, or what's the cartoon one? I always forget the
Rebels, Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. I like the Clone Wars, but if you did something like that where it just like a military sci-fi Star Wars that was more focused and more strict with his
like
military. Yeah, like more strict with his military hierarchy and the characters.
Yeah.
Michael A. Rebels was excellent.
Yeah, it was Michael J. I think it was Michael J. Stackpole. He did this X Squadron series that I didn't read, but I remember reading one of his books. He did I, Jedi, which is probably one of my favorite EU books. That focused on Corran Horn, who was from the X-Wing series. Something like that would be great.
Those would be great.
Yeah.
What did you guys think
but in Star Wars?
Yeah.
What did you guys think of Solo? And
do
we want a Donald Glover Lando movie?
So I'll put it like this. When it came to Solo, I thought that it was a story we didn't need to hear. I thought where he got his last name was stupid. I would have rather
that was so dumb.
I would have rather they kept it where he still had his cousin. I know I'm still stuck in the EU. Thraken Sal Solo. I would have rather he still existed.
Right.
But I love the world that Solo opened up.
Yeah.
In terms of just the scumbag, scoundrel, speedier side of Star Wars. I would want to see more of that. That's what I'd like to see.
So most likely like Cantina on a large scale, basically.
Yeah. Or just, bounty hunters doing bounty hunter things, but we're getting it with the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that I will say about the end of the movie, that, Rey goes back and it's kind of the closure on Tatooine where she goes back to Luke's house and whatnot. And then, she says, I'm Rey Skywalker. Even that, like, the setup for that line was so forced, like so on the nose, like when she says, my name's Rey, and who in there ever has like, what's your last name? Ever, like, who has ever done that? Like when I met Scott, I was like, Scott, what's your name? Scott? No, Scott. Oh,
Scott.
Well, what's your last name?
And a mystery.
What's your surname?
What's your surname?
Tell me some ID.
And you know what? And what would have been great is the people who are all kind of harking over, like, oh, well, it means that family doesn't matter, which it never mattered. The Skywalkers are just an aberration. But it would have been great at the end. She's just like, I'm Rey.
I'm just Rey.
Just Rey.
And if they would have just left it at Rey, because I think what we're talking about with kind of the new Jedi thing that you mentioned, she has a yellow lightsaber, right? Which is not green or red or anything, and it's kind of neutral. Right. Yeah. So we see this neutrality that obviously she's now going to bring into whatever she's doing. If she would have just left it as Rey, then now we have a completely different Jedi story to tell, because it's not a Skywalker story. It's not a Skywalker Jedi. Doesn't even have to be a Jedi. It's now I am Rey. I use the Force, and I have a new lightsaber that doesn't match anything else. It's not like Sam Jackson's purple lightsaber because he was cool. It's a.
I'm just so badass. My lightsaber's purple.
I want purple. But it's a meaningful thing if she just says I'm Rey and her lightsaber is a different color. I thought that was
but even though it started off as cool, they're actually, when you kind of go back in the story in terms of what form he'd mastered, it actually made sense because he'd mastered Form 7, Vapad, which really, really dangerously flirts with the dark side. You have to be very, very strong-willed to not fall to the dark side when you're using Vapad. So that's what made it work. It was the battle. Yeah, it was kind of like the internal struggle of kind of that balance.
That's awesome.
I blame the entire Empire on Mace Windu.
Yeah.
If he'd have just been like, you know what, Anakin, you're right. Let's arrest him. Let's just put him in. Let's take him instead of the whole fighting thing. Palpatine would have lost.
Well,
that's my opinion.
Cece, I want to thank you for coming on and ranting with us about Star Wars.
I just had to get it out somewhere because I saw it and I was just like, I've talked about it with some friends, but I was just like, I knew this would be a great forum with great minds to discuss this. So
what's interesting is when I first mentioned doing a Rise of the Skywalker breakdown episode, Charles sent me a message on Facebook, like literally as soon as I mentioned we were going to do an episode.
Yeah.
My messenger goes, ding, ding.
I'm in.
And I was like, oh, yeah, man, absolutely.
Walt says, I need more CCAKK Star Wars knowledge.
He's a vault.
Definitely impressed.
Everybody that joined us in the live chat tonight, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us. There was a lot of shenanigans and a lot of participation, and I know we didn't get to a lot of your guys' points, and I apologize. I want to know, we ranted a lot, so I would really like to know in the comments of this video on YouTube, not on Facebook, on YouTube, what were your favorite parts of this movie? Just one thing, like we talked about at the beginning. What did you like about it? Because I think if we focus on the positive, then we can look at see what can we do in our own writing that we can do better to enhance our writing. There's a lot of negativity out there. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity around these series and around Star Wars. But I think that helps us in our own writing to see what we need to do to make a good a story. So in the comments, let us know what you liked about the Rise of Skywalker, and
make something up.
Yeah. And you can't just say the visuals like I did. You have to say
don't pull a muscle doing this.
That's right. Somebody's gonna say I liked Firefly or whatever. Thank you guys for coming in.
Babylon 5 was awesome.
We need to do a Babylon 5 watch party is what we need to do.
Yes.
Babylon 5 was awesome.
Yeah. That is one of the underrated best
sci-fi
series.
So good.
Just great and contained, like fantastic.
I think,
yes.
And I say this all the time.
And it holds up.
If you start at the middle of season 1 and you go all the way to the end of season 4 and don't watch season 5, you have the best, self-contained like arc of any sci-fi series you could watch. That sets up promises, that makes things interesting, that even in the time travel thing, like just sets up the arc that is so well played out. Because obviously Michael Michael Straczynski wrote the whole thing before they made it. It's just very good storytelling. Don't watch when they have shootouts in the corridors and the corridors move. Just ignore that. And watch for the story.
Made
a long time ago.
And an interesting note about that. So apparently he took that idea to Paramount, to the Star Trek folk, and they rejected him. Yeah. And then what came out afterwards? Deep Space Nine.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I heard that story too.
I don't like that idea, but
we're taking it, making ourselves.
Tweak it a little bit.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna wrap it up there. Everybody that watched us live, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. If you're watching live and you have not subscribed, please go and subscribe at our YouTube channel. It will help the channel out once we get to 1,000. It gives us some other things that we can do with the channel, and also gives us some more visibility on the videos. And lets us know what you want to see. I don't know what we're going to be doing at all next week. We'll figure something out. Kayleen and Lauren will be here on Thursday nights for the Writer's Journey. Tune in tomorrow morning at 7:30 for Walt and Coffee and Concepts. And if you did not catch Kayleen's story time today, go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Keystroke Medium, and check out Storytime with Kayleen, where she reads first chapters or bits of books of all kinds. Go check that out, and then come and hang out with us. Next week, we're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
But we won't
Josh
be
is-
talking about Rise of
Josh has
Skywalker.
spoken.
Later.
Josh has spoken.
I have
Yeah.
spoken.
Yeah.
This is the way.